Hello. This video is going to show you how to add and subtract fractions with unlike denominators. When we are adding or subtracting fractional parts, we always want to make sure that our denominators are the same, because whenever I'm adding fractions such as 1/3 and 1/4, a third is a different size than a fourth. So we have to make our fractions the same size, be the same size pieces. So in this case, we can't add fractions with unlike denominators, so we have to find a common denominator. I always encourage the students to rewrite the problem going vertically, because it's a little bit easier to work that way, and then use this method to help find a common denominator. So if I have the denominators of 3 and 4, one thing that I can do is I can count by 3s and I can count by 4s to try to find a common multiple. So up here, if I count by 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. And if I count by 4s, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So if I look at these multiples, I can quickly see that 12 is a common multiple of 3 and 4. So 12 would be my common denominator. So what I'm doing is I'm now going to make an equivalent fraction of 1/3 and 1/4 so that they have the same size pieces. The other way that you can look at this is if you multiply the two denominators by each other, that will always give you a common denominator. So 3 times 4 is 12. In this case, it does give you the least common denominator, but in some cases, it may not give you the least common denominator, and you may have to simplify later. So now to change these into their equivalent fractions, I'm going to need to multiply by a fraction that's equal to 1. And the reason we multiply by a fraction equal to 1 is we're not changing the value of it, we're just making an equivalent fraction. We're changing the size of the pieces and the number that we have so that we can easily add. So whenever I think 3 times what will give me 12, I know 3 times 4. So that means I'm going to multiply 1/3 times 4/4. 4/4 is equal to 1, and anything times 1 is still that number. So I'm not changing the value, I'm just making an equivalent fraction. So 3 times 4 is 12, and 1 times 4 is 4/12. So here, for 1/4, I know that 4 times 3 will give me 12. So that means I'm going to multiply 1/4 by 3/3. Again, a fraction that's equal to 1. So 1 times 3 is 3. So now that I have the same denominator, I'm ready to add my fractions. So 4 plus 3 is 7. So 7/12. So we do not add our denominators together. We only add the numerators to get our final answer. So now that we've done one together, let's see if we can try one more to help you work through and think about those common denominators. So let's say that we have 2/3 plus 1/6. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this vertically. And I can see that I don't have common denominators, so I need to go ahead and set it up so that I can find those equivalent fractions and make the same denominator to make it making the adding part easier. So I can use the strategy that I told you last time. I can just multiply the two denominators to get a common denominator. So if I multiply 3 times 6, that's going to give me 18. So then to make my equivalent fraction, I know I have to multiply this by a fraction that's equal to 1. So I know 3 times 6 is 18. So that's going to be 6/6. So 2 times 6 is 12. And then down here, 6 times 3 is 18. So I'm going to multiply this one by 3/3. So 1 times 3 is 3. So my equivalent fraction for 2/3 is 12/18. My equivalent fraction for 1/6 is 3/18. So 12 plus 3 is 15/18. Now in this case, my fraction can be simplified, which means I am able to divide the numerator and denominator by the same number to reduce that fraction. And students do need to be able to know how to do this and know how to recognize fractions that may need to be simplified or fractions that are equivalent to it. So when I think about 15 and 18, I know that I can divide both of these by 3, so I'm going to divide them by 3/3. So 15 divided by 3 is 5, and 18 divided by 3 is 6. So this would be 5/6. If I wanted to find the least common denominator, I might try that strategy that I showed you on the last problem. If I count by 3s, 3, 6, 9, 12. And if I count by 6s, 6, 12, 18, 24. So I can see that 6 is a common denominator. 12 is also a common denominator. And if I would keep counting by 3s, I would also see that 18 is also a common denominator. So you can use any of those to make equivalent fractions. You just need to make sure that you're able to simplify those at the end. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.